Yeah, okay, somebody got that. And yes, as introduced, today's topic, or this hour's topic, is about the Microsoft Loop and getting the grips to the Loop components in Teams. So I'm going to go through some about what's the Loop components and so on. My name is Nopanen, but of course, please do call me Vesku. I'm one of the Office Apps and Services MVPs, and I'm working for Sulava, which is now part of the Broad Horizon Group. And as said, I'm coming from Finland, but because this is virtual online, hey, we can be anywhere in the metaverse, which is great. What to expect? Basically, I'm going to go through what are the Loop components. So you are getting kind of the idea what we are talking about. Then, of course, showing you some live demos, how you are going to be using them, how you can use them, and perhaps some ideas when you should be using them, as well as bringing in some insights and challenges and what to look ahead about. And as an outcome, you should be understanding what the Loop components are and how to use them in Teams. This is not a deep technical dive session. This is about 200 levels, so you know how to use them. We don't go into backgrounds, or we don't create our Loop components. Well, you can't create Loop components here yet, or your own Loop components, but and we are focusing on Teams part. I have roughly 40-50% of the demos here. And of course, the caveat is they're like, this is valid for 6 weeks or so. Microsoft is updating things all the time, and personally, I am expecting that they will be announcing something at the build at the end of May, which is roughly 6 or 7 weeks away. Some of the stuff will be outdated by then, and some of them don't. But we can start with a short video first, just 1 minute, so you know about how Microsoft announced the loops. Okay, that's it. That's an interesting video because it kind of shows you a lot of things, but it doesn't really tell you anything. But I really like the way they are bringing in how Teams, our Loop is connecting things and showing the Loop across amongst the other Office 365 or Microsoft 365 tools and features. So we can kind of dive deeper and about what are the Loop components, so you will get a bit more clear picture about that. Okay, let's not play it again. As a deconstruct, so it's Microsoft Loop. It's a new application and components that combine that powerful and flexible canvas. Yeah, it's a kind of a whiteboard style experience. It's a kind of you've been using OneNote, for example, or I hope you have been using OneNote a lot, and so it's a kind of a free canvas you can work with the others. So okay, that's the same as with OneNote. But what is really a thing that it's portable? It's made of those portable components. So they're basically building blocks or items you can surface in other applications, and thinking about the Office applications and Teams at this point, of course. And I think the thing about the Loop is that because you can surface and take that component and port it to or copy it to the other application, and it will sync immediately those changes that anyone is doing. So you can move it freely across the Microsoft 365 applications. So part of that is the future, and you will see later about what's available now and what's going to be available later. But the thing is that it's really changing or allowing us to change how we are going to be collaborating together. Because instead of working on full documents or full OneNote page or something like that, we are going to be working with the snippets of content. and then we can surface that content into different applications, and they all will be staying in sync. And so that's a really great approach to the hybrid world, and of course to the future as well. First of all, the components. The loops are being created from components. That's the kind of the building block or item. That's the kind of the smallest piece, atomic units of productivity you can use across different apps. And what you can do there, you can add a paragraph of text. So basically a free canvas. You can add their tables, as you can see in the picture. You can add lists, links, dates, mention people, adding images, adding agenda, adding comments. That's possible there. And these components are being stored in your OneDrive for Business. So they always go to your OneDrive, at least in this point. And they are named as .fluid files. They are based on the Fluid framework that was released a few years ago or announced. And this is kind of a very good working approach what the Fluid can do. And why I have .loop there and .fluid in parentheses is that because in the documents Microsoft is now providing, they are talking about .loops. So apparently they are going to be renaming those .fluid files to .loops, because for most of the people it would be really confusing. What is this fluid file when I'm working with loops? So it kind of makes sense for them to rename it. But it's not out yet, but it's already in the documentation part. But this is the atomic unit. This is the smallest block, the component. That's something we are going to be working on today, and you will be able to see what I'm doing there. Okay, but when we are going more towards the future or back to the future, and we are talking about the pages. These are not out yet. These loop pages are going to be a way where you can kind of organize your components. So you can take components even from different sources. That's how we see this, and you can put them to the loop pages. So you have content that people can work on, and as can be seen in that in the text there, we can see that, okay, people have been agreeing there or giving comments, and there are different comments or kind of reactions to the other part of that page. So they are reacting on those components. So they are basically paragraphs that you can put in there. And this is when it's going to be a bit confusing, because now I can create loop components that look like pages. And because I can insert different components into a one component, so kind of a nesting approach. So that's why it's going to be a bit kind of a fuzzy for people. They don't know exactly, okay, how this is going to be working. But because we can't really use the pages yet, then of course it doesn't really, it's not the point of today. But when the pages come out, then it can be a bit more confusing. But of course, we are going to be seeing just as kind of a longer paragraph here, and then we can add them here and there. And thinking about the pages, it may be a good idea to kind of stick to the shorter components that you can freely insert to different places. And on top of that is going to be the Microsoft Loop application. And as can be seen there, it's a Loop client. It's just like you have OneNote or you have Word or something else. You're going to be getting a client. That's going to contain workspaces. And no, don't confuse this with SharePoint sites or anything like that. It's just a name reuse. So we are again getting back to workspaces. And these are groups. These are not teams, these are groups, and these are not Office 365 groups either. But you can organize your loop pages into workspaces. And then there's going to be kind of a different people in different workspaces that they have access, and they have different elements. They have page there that has elements or components we've been adding there. We can see the alt pin there, and we can see PDF that's going to be combined to that particular page. And then we see more pages that are going to be inside one workspace. Of course, we don't know yet how the permission model is going to be or anything like that. But I think this is going to be very, very flexible and easy. That's probably one reason why the loop components are in the OneDrive, because it's kind of easy to start sharing access there. But that's just my speculation. But I think overall, the loop client is going to be very interesting because tracking the progress towards shared goals. It sounds a bit like Teams, but Teams has a very, very different function. This is about getting the content done. This is about ideating, creating the content, This is not about communicating with each other. And this is not about those big documents either. This is more about, okay, we are creating something together. So instead of emails and chats and ping-ponging documents with people, we are going to be using this kind of tool. And that's going to be very interesting to see how it's going to be finally dropping into organizations, because of course we have to admit that we will have a kind of overlapping clients. Some people are going to be wondering, okay, what about the OneNote? Some people are going to be wondering, okay, can't we use SharePoint sites for this, or Team site, and open up pages there? Why we can't do this other ways? Yeah, we can use different ways that Microsoft 365 provides, but we have to think about, okay, how it fits into our organization, how it fits to our way of working, what kind of tools are going to be the best ones. Okay, some of this is purely speculation because the client is not out yet, and we are not going to be seeing how it's going to emerge everywhere, or how it's going to change our actual way of working with the loop client or pages. But we do know how it's going to be changing into components part, because we already have experience about those. And just think about the architecture if that picture wasn't clear there. You can think about the loops workspaces containing those pages, and they have different components. And this is the surface everywhere part. Like that loop component that's going to be inside the page might be residing inside Teams. Okay, or we might have this component here that's going to be inside Outlook and Word in the future. Or that same component, there are lines everywhere here, just to emphasize the point. Because you can edit the changes in the Word. It will be visible inside the loop page. It will be visible inside the Outlook and inside the Teams. Everything is in sync. And about surfacing the components today. Okay, this is the today here where we can use this. Well, basically we can use them in Teams internal private chats. We can use them in one-on-one chats, and we can use them in group or meeting chats. But they have to be internal to our organization only. We can't use them across organizations at the moment. And we can't share them at the email at the moment. But we can use office.com for editing and sharing. We want to, and in some cases we have to use it. But what is really interesting is the near future. Unfortunately, that future is more than 8 hours ahead. I guess it's going to be built around summer, perhaps during the H2 of this year. But we will be starting to see loops inside Teams more. We will be seeing them in the meeting, inside the meeting, where we can put in the agenda, add meeting notes in there. Hopefully, we will be seeing them in channels and tasks wherever it looks like a kind of a suitable place. And also what was mentioned in the announcement that we are going to be seeing them inside OneNote. So this is the part when you start thinking about, okay, how this is going to work. I think it's going to work the way that we can take the component from Teams and insert inside the OneNote, for example. Then we have the component inside OneNote, and people who want to have more kind of a more structure in the notes can use the OneNote part, and if they just edit the loop part, they can just contribute to everything everyone else is going to be seeing there. And yes, it's going to need some kind of a guidance. It's going to need a playbook, how we are going to be working and using this. Seeing them inside Outlook. How many times we have seen this situation where we are doing something inside Teams, for example, we've been chatting back and forth about some ideas. Okay, we want to have somebody else included here, but hey, we know that person doesn't use Teams. Then we just go ahead and send an email and ask about things from there. Okay, or perhaps we have one note page. We've been very futuristic or up to date, modern, and we've been putting our notes to OneNote, but we know that the single person doesn't use OneNote, or they don't like to use it. They just reply in email. So in that case, what we want to do is that we want to include that loop component with all that content to the email. And when we included that to the email, they receive it, they can see it inside their email client. They can put in their input. So they don't even necessarily know much about, okay, this is a loop component. Probably the user interface will tell them, okay, this is loop, they are editing it. But they don't have to even reply if they don't want to. They just edit the component. And the information they are editing, it's going to be synced back. And that's the syncing. And the same, what about if we just push it to the Word? Office applications was also mentioned, so pushing to the Word, PowerPoint is really making sense. Probably tables and Excel is going to be connected. So we might have a component that people are updating. It's going to be updating our information in PowerPoint. And now I know some people are scared. Okay, I don't want those changes because I want my document to be intact. It's not following my version history. It's not following the governance part. But of course, you can copy paste the information if you want, or you can kind of detach very likely from the word from updating. But I think the thing is that how we are thinking about the documents in the future is that we are having these building blocks when we create the document or presentation, and we can have that up-to-date information if somebody is updating that. And it's going to be visible in the document. Perhaps the version control or saving or protecting it from changes is going to be there, something else. I would think that they have to think about these processes, how we are going to be updating our documents when it comes out of those little snippets. But I think also that the beauty is that you can have people just, for example, to contribute to the estimated schedule or estimated work amount. You have a kind of list of tasks there or a list of project phases, and you just need some estimates from the architect. And they already know based on that, okay, if I just update these based on my experience, they will be kind of there. They don't even have to open the document to be able to update, because that's the thing about doing something in the flow work. We are doing it inside the chat. Traditionally, how that's going to be working in the old-fashioned way. Okay, project manager has the document open. They are going to send a chat message to the architect. Okay, you have these tasks. How would you estimate it, or do you agree with this? They don't necessarily even open the document. Even now, they just get the list in the chat and then they start typing back, because it's kind of a fast way of interacting with people. But with with the loop component, you can do the updates and the project manager doesn't have to copy paste. I personally love whiteboard. I love my whiteboard a lot, and I think that's going to be the big thing here because in those announcements Microsoft did at the Ignite in the November 2021 when the loop was announced, is that you could put those inside the whiteboard. And that's going to be really interesting because you can have snippets of information, tables, texts, tasks inside the whiteboard, and people can be updating them inside Teams, inside Outlook, inside OneNote, inside Word, and they will be all reflected there. So when you are ideating something, that same component in the whiteboard, you are changing things, putting things there, it's going to be reflected back to all those documents. And in the whiteboard, this is making the most sense, I think, because it's no longer a whiteboard document, but instead you have those pieces of information, pieces of content there. You are using that to ideate something and putting in your thoughts, and they can be kind of a sync to the other so-called real documents. So you don't have to copy paste information from whiteboard to something else or somewhere else. And I think that's really a big thing here. And there's more, there's like Dynamics things, and you can surface, for example, the record from Dynamics directly to Teams chat. And some person working on the maintenance or field worker can do and update their opinions or their task information back to the Dynamics. So it's just not about the text. The loop component is actually going to be a kind of a small application that you can surface inside Teams chat, inside email, inside OneNote, inside Word, inside whiteboard. And I think that's the kind of a thing that's kind of inspiring me with loops. Okay, that was lots of talking already, half an hour, so 20 minutes, sorry about that. It's time to head for the demo. So how you are going to be using this for real. So let's go ahead and let me share my virtual machine so you can start seeing what's happening. Okay, I have here a virtual machine, and I have two different Teams clients. I have a desktop client here on the left side, and then I have on the right side with a light background is the web client. It's in the same tenant, obviously. I have my alter ego here, again working with the desktop client, and my friend Chris Horde, alter ego, is working here on the web client. So how we can start working with loops? So I just need your attention here when we are creating a new message to chat. And pressing the loop component, you can see different components. We can create the bulleted list, checklist, numbered list, paragraph, which is text, table, and task list. And what I like to do is I like to start with paragraph, basically always, because it's the free canvas. It's the kind of page. And what it's doing now, it's starting to sync. It's telling me about, okay, who have the permissions to work with this one. Okay, people with your organization, with the link, that's the most best solution here. So we can control how people can edit that loop if we want. And then we add a title. Let's just put MN loops in here. So we have title, but nobody else is seeing anything yet. Let me just copy paste some information. I have some text there, so I don't have to type. Okay, I have some of the text here, and yeah, that was directly from my blog. I just copy pasted, nothing major, and we have some text. And when we send this message, send this loop component, then the other ones in the chat can start seeing that. That's when the component is created. Okay, let me just create it. It's starting to sync, and we can see that directly on the right. Okay, we are seeing that changes. If I go here, I can you can start seeing the cursor where it's going and how we can start adding things or editing things. And if I scroll here a bit, we can see, okay, it's there. Yeah, excellent. And if I, let's put the Microsoft Cloud there, and we can bold it with Control B, just usual, and we can see the changes all the time. Or if I go here and Chris is doing something, we can see that things are changing all the time. And we can see that his cursor, where he is, and who has the file open. So this is the easiest way. We just start adding information. But of course, we want to do more. We want to start adding new components. Well, we can add a table. Okay, let's add a table. And we can add some, let's put here like the person and not task, but the kind of a topic, duration if we want to. And I can start adding here, let's mention Chris, who's there, and talk about keynote here on that one. So we can see things are changing all the time. And Chris can mention me, and we can see already that the things are being mentioned. So you know if you are being mentioned inside. So we are seeing, okay, that's coming from the Windows, and that the earlier was coming from the web browser. So we can start adding whatever we want to. For example, mention was there. We could add the date because it is tied to the specific date. We have a date picker there. So if we go here, we can go ahead and choose the different date if we want. Or go ahead and add the task list, and we can have a very nice task list. Unfortunately, this task list is not connected to To-Do, which is kind of, I don't know, not the kind of the best thing. But if you create a task list or kind of a checklist in OneNote, it's not connected to To-Do either. So you have to think about this as a very, very lightweight ways of doing these tasks. Okay, we are preparing this event. We need a few things people have to do, so we can ideate together who's doing and what. Somebody needs to prepare the keynote, and I can add myself there just with that mention as usual, adding due dates. So we can start seeing, okay, how this is forming up. And here as well, let's add here the loop, and I just for fun, I add Chris here. So we have different persons. I can add more tasks. And when something is done, we can just check it done. And it syncs all the time. We are creating one big loop component as a demo here. And this is what I told. This is kind of a page, but it's not. So that's the fun part. We can add images. If I add an image, it starts to ask from my hard drive something. Let's put that one. Yes, I could do that, or I can go ahead and open my blog post. Let me just copy that image, and I can copy paste it. The image, it's there, and it's already there as well. So you can see it syncing all the time. What else we had? Of course, we had the agenda, which is kind of slightly different from task list. It would be when we are starting to form up the event. I have something I could just copy paste there. Yeah. And so we have the agenda. We could go ahead and copy paste the link somewhere. Let's go ahead and just choose the agenda part. I could use the right click, but I can also use Control K to add a link. Yes, we can add links. That's no deal, not a big thing. And of course, just for gigs tweak, we could have some other shortcuts visible. Just put them. It already formatted the stuff I copied from the OneNote. So if I can go to bold, Control I for italic, Control U for underlined, and link I already showed. But as seen, as I pasted the info here, you can use the right click, so you have more controls available. So you can see all the shortcuts. You can increase and decrease indents. You can change these to headers, body, and have these basic text decorations. It's not fully visible here. Okay, let's hope it's going to be more visible here. Okay, here board italic, strike throughs. So you can do basically anything you need to do here. You can add comments with double hash, and just using the headers. Not too difficult. So double hash for comment, and here is this comment. So we can do a very nice amount of things directly within the loop component. It's kind of page. I can understand why some people think it's a page, but this is a loop component. This is not the ideal way, but this is something I've been doing, for example, when we have some meeting notes. So instead of pushing back and forth chat messages, I'm using these loop components. So anybody in the meeting can attend. So you can see if you have everyone from your organization doing the kind of internal meeting notes, or having a brainstorming session, or thinking about the agenda of the event or something like that, putting things there into loop component, adding comments, changing things, and so it's going to say insert person here, for example. Okay, let's insert person, so it's at mentioned, so I get the notification. So this is kind of a very, very fluid way of collaborating with people, getting everyone in the chat into the same place. And how do you work on the office.com here? Well, let me just go here, and just I'm doing this for a single the reason it's going to open a new tab, because okay, I can see here who has the file open. I can see who has access to that file. And yes, I could copy that. I will show that later. But here, the title, the MN Loops, it's a link. It will open that inside my office.com. So if you thought about that canvas was too small, hey, now we have a full canvas. We are at office.com. We don't have to look into the small window there, but instead we can start looking through the whole page. And yeah, it looks like a page, but it's a component. So, and if you want to rename it, you can just go ahead and change the name there. So you can see you can add components within a component. For example, if when I'm here inside the table, I can still add. I can add images. I can't add another table inside the table, but I can add comments. I can add bulleted lists if I want to, or I can add a checklist inside here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, that's quite nice. And now that I'm editing them inside office.com, I can see those changes. There's my that was the task list. There's the table. We can see these things. If I go ahead and start clicking them done, it's kind of updating it. And I think that's pretty cool. Okay, let me go back. Okay, there are a couple of questions. I'm going to open my presentation back there, and I'm going to answer those questions there. Okay. Okay, so Michelle is just making it clear. I created a loop component in Teams chat, like yes. And yes, I'm coming back to where it's going to be stored. And is there a loop web path for SharePoint pages? No, not yet. I don't know if there's going to be one. I certainly hope there's going to be one, but currently, no. So prereqs, how do you get started? As I mentioned, yeah, they are still .fluid components, but they are going to be loops in the future. You need to have a SharePoint license, and tenant needs to have fluid enabled. It's going to be kind of on by default, and but the organization can turn it off. If you turn fluid components off, it's going to also turn the new whiteboard components off, because they are also kind of fluid files and lots of other things. So unless you are really certain you want them off, you can do that. If you are really certain you want them off, you can do that. But otherwise, I would rather keep them on. They are going to be stored inside your OneDrive. So they are basically just inside the Teams chat files. You need a SharePoint license, and OneDrive needs to be enabled. And you can use these Teams loops components in desktop, mobile, web, and even in Linux. But it has to be a kind of Teams client when you are working inside Teams. Will it work in a VDI environment? Earlier, there was a slide, Chris and I were created this. We had a kind of a question mark for VDI. We don't know. I haven't seen a mention. So please try it and let us know. I don't have a VDI set up, so I couldn't test that one. That's a great question. That was the first time people asked about the VDI. There are limits. Like I mentioned, you can only use them with private chats within your organization. You cannot use them in federated chats yet, and you cannot use them in channels. And there's comment like loops in Teams Share channel is in development, which is SharePoint. Okay, that was Michelle, so that's coming from Microsoft. And it's great to hear about that part. And somebody is just saying, okay, somebody has tried and it works at VDI. Excellent. Thank you for that information. If you go and take the loop file away from OneDrive and move it to any other document library, so basically other OneDrive or to SharePoint OneDrive, it will break it. So you can move it to the different folder inside your OneDrive, but if you move it outside your OneDrive, the component stops working inside Teams. You can still edit the component through the office.com. I can copy the loop file to the SharePoint or Teams team files. And if I click open, if I try to click it open inside Teams, I get an error. If I click it open through SharePoint, it will open at office.com. And then I can edit it. And you cannot create loop components inside office.com. You can create them inside Teams chat only. You can copy paste them if you want in the OneDrive, but it will again work only in the office.com only at this point. So we can see this is kind of a very new to this ecosystem. You can't use HTML or Markdown, but you have other shortcut keys you can use, and so you have some formatting available. All right, I can go back to demos and show more copying, sharing, pinning components and discovering. So basically some best practices and some of the things you don't want to do. All right. When we have a chat and we add a loop component there, it's really easy to get lost. So if we have a lot of chat, I have actually one more loop component there that I created earlier. I added some GIFs so it wouldn't be confusing you. And so you can kind of lose the component if you just think from the Teams perspective, Teams chat perspective. So I can go and choose these 3 dots and go ahead and pin it. Because when I have pinned this component, I can get to that really easily. It doesn't matter where I'm in the chat. I can just click on the pin component and it will open. That's kind of a best practice. If you have a group chat, meeting chat, something, and you create that loop component, pin it, because it's going to make it very easy to discover by everyone else in the chat. Everyone else there. When you create that loop component, it's going to be in your OneDrive. So the others don't necessarily find it. But I was talking about surfacing the loop component in different places. We saw that in the chat, and then we opened that in the office.com. But I think the beauty is that we can copy this component. I have a group there pre-done. That's basically Adam and Chris. So there's one extra person there. I can go ahead and paste that link. It has to be a new message. You can't have anything else there. But hey, I already can see this loop, that information. And if I send the loop there, send the loop, I send the message. Okay, it's showing for Chris in the other chat. And I can see the same component. Now, if I go there and hit 3, it's updating that one in the stay in the loop. So we have 2 chats and with the component, and everything is updated. I can go ahead and take a quick look on the office.com, and it's updated. So it's staying up to date. Even more, I can take this component and copy it to Matti, who didn't have any access before. So I can ask for Matti's opinions directly into the same component. Hey, would you please go ahead and check this out if everything is okay, or could you just add these kind of your ideas about the due dates, for example. And Matti could go ahead and start adding due dates. So let's just put here schedule, which would be Matti's. Okay, Matti is not in the chat, so I can't add him there. But so I have to be the member of the chat, so I can add him there. But everybody else can see. Okay, Matti has been appointed. So this is the idea when you start thinking about the email, for example. I could take this component, copy it, go to the email Outlook, send it to someone who's not using Teams chat, or hopefully in the future when you can work across the organizations, and put that component to the email. So they can go ahead and update their information, and we can see that information in every possible location. And what is important is that this is the copying this link in the chat is the way to share it. If you take this link from any other place, it's not going to work inside Teams. Let me show you. Because now that I have my OneDrive here, it's going into Microsoft Teams chat files. This is the Minnesota loops file. I can see, okay, what has been happening, who's been doing something. And yes, I can go ahead and check out this version history. Okay. We can go back to earlier version if somebody swiped something. We could add flows, Power Automate here. We can start creating a flow. We can move it to different folder. We can copy it to somewhere else. And we can, of course, copy the link. If I take this link, yes, I can copy this link here, and I can paste it to Chris in the Outlook. Yeah, it opens in the office.com. But if I go and paste it here in Teams, I'm just going to get a kind of a link that doesn't open inside Teams. It's going to open only inside the browser and the office.com. But it's opening. Yeah, that's kind of a good thing. But it's not ideal to the flow working. So yes, I can manage access. If I touch this access and start removing access and trying to add something else, it's kind of one caveat. You don't want to do that because it will more or less break it into teams as well. If I delete this one, it will go to my recycle bin and I can retrieve it back. If I switch my employer, so I'm leaving the organization, my manager, hopefully they have the possibility to go through my files and kind of take away the important ones. Of course, it will break the loop, but it's possible. So I could go ahead and now copy it. Okay, let's copy it. Okay, I don't have too much here, but I can copy it to SharePoint. So it's going to be inside my Teams and inside the metaverse. Okay, there's the loops. And now if I click into Teams, the last time I tried, it kind of failed. Well, it's not failing now, but it's not working either. So I guess that's an improvement. Perhaps it will work on this on some day. But if I go here and again, let's go ahead and open. Yeah, I really enjoy when these windows are too small. Okay. Just there, open in SharePoint, which is kind of a small, and I can have it inside SharePoint. This is now a different file. This is not the same loop. And if I copy it, it's a different component. So if I do now some changes here, it's not going to be replicating because I copied the fluid file to the SharePoint. But I can use it just through office.com. So it's possible. So that's kind of one of these ways you can play around with loops. It's kind of a thing that when you start thinking about the playbook, how you are going to use it, these are kind of things you may encounter if people don't really pay attention what they are doing, or they don't have a good kind of ideas or kind of good playbook what to do and when. Let me show you one more thing. Is of course that we all like to use mobile devices. So let's get this one. Last time this worked. Yeah. Okay, I have the kind of my Teams mobile here. I can go to the stay in the loop, for example, open the chat, and it's starting to open me the loop component. And I can see it already here. Okay, when it goes and checks it around, I can see the component, and if I click it open, it will open in my mobile, and I can. It's not the fastest possible, I see, but I can go and see what's in here. Next topic. So I can edit it directly through my phone, and I think that's the key thing here. And adding whatever I want to add, or staying inside the loop, and working on the loop components, and giving my contribution even when I'm somewhere else. Okay, let's close that one. All right, there's some other video coming up, but I will share my presentation back again. Okay, what kind of questions there are? Okay, there was much more talk about these components. Let me just go to my demo 2 page. Let's talk about retention policies. Not because it's saved on the OneDrive. Yeah, and copying loop link. Yeah, it's just share. And so if the user leaves the company and his or her license is removed, the original loop would disappear if it's not copied to somewhere else. Yeah, it can happen. You can copy the link to Outlook, yes, but it's not unfurling the component. It's going to be just like the link I showed you. People have to click it open. And I think the biggest thing about the unfurling part is that when the component opens is that people can work on the content in the flow of their work. Okay, somebody's noticed that updating one note page or section doesn't change the notebook's last modified date. Interesting. I can't say to that. I'm not going to go ahead and check things around yet. Okay. So there's some talk. It's sorry, you always want to kind of check on the chat if there's some questions, because these are great spots to answer questions. And there are a few things. So insights, basically things I already showed you. You can share them. So you have, or then the way you can share them, especially hopefully in the future. So basically it's consistent experience through SharePoint OneDrive lists. It's now a slightly different, but the principle is the same. It's one file in OneDrive. You are using the same sharing controls to share it across your organization. You can pin those Loop components in Teams chat messages, and it provides that visibility. And you can nest components within components. And of course, the links, what I was trying to say is the component link is different from the office.com sharing. They are not the same, at least not currently. About the compliance part, retention policies, there was some talk about the retention, but components are basically covered by a OneDrive retention part because they are files inside OneDrive. The policies and labels work there. They have that version history, and you can retrieve them from recycle bin. Components are not are visible on a content search, but if you think about in the e-discovery part, but of course you just can't. It doesn't have too much information, just the link to the fluid file, and they are not visible in the audit log. Sensitive labels, DLP is not there. Something, of course, I want to show in this part before I go too far away from that. There's one thing I forgot to show you earlier is how you can discover this and find this. Is that the best place to find these or these components you are working with is the office.com. And we can see here some of our quick access. We can already see the loop components and here, but we can also use the content filter. And in the type, you can see the loop components and you can specify other things. I have already created the loop component, so we can see, okay, we have these loop components. We have two of them because they are in different places. This is on my, basically on my OneDrive, and this is on the team files. So I can find and discover this much more easier. And if I go ahead and search for Metaverse, I'm already seeing these loop components here. So if I just want to limit that, okay, loop wasn't here after all, should have tested that, but I can see loop components in the search. So, and one more place where you can find this is, of course, you can go to recent files or what's being shared with you, and so shared with you, shared by you, so you can find these files. And if you are using the mobile app or even on the desktop office.com application, you can find the loop components in there as well. So the discoverability is good, especially when people realize that this office.com homepage and that you can create these quick access kind of defaults there. So then you can find your components very, very easily, or what you have recently opened, worked with, and so on. Okay, back to the presentation. That's fun that it doesn't ask me again about the next one, but let's go ahead and go forward from the compliance, benefits and challenges. So basically, I think the key thing is about when you are planning creating something new. And that flow of work is really important. It's a small component. You can easily add coworkers there, work with them, get ideas, ideate with people, get inspired, and all that stuff that's really easy to use. They don't have to open a document or OneNote or anything like that. And you can, as you saw, you can use it in different endpoints, and you can see they are all in sync all the time. So it's kind of a whiteboard, micro canvas, or kind of a OneNote page, if you like to think. Of course, it's a new way of working. It's a new way to collaborate. It can be a bit vague. It can be a bit abstract. How we are going to do that? There's how we really are going to be including this in our document management. So it will need some guidance and playbooks adoption, but people need to see the examples. They need to see some of the use cases, why and when we are using things. The full app may not be here for a while. I'm having my fingers crossed for the build, but I don't know. It might be that we will see it in the autumn. But it was mentioned that, okay, during this year, we should get the full application. So it's still on the works. It's still kind of the first version of the loop. But it can open you a really, really good possibilities how to use it. And some people don't really like that it's being housed into OneDrive. And some are saying that, okay, I want it to be inside channels before we start using that. And I think that's a slightly wrong way to think about that, because the way you are using it inside in your chat box, because you can't use that in channels right now, even, yes, it's in the works, but inside chat, if you are just chatting with somebody, or you are chatting in a meeting chat or in a group, they are not in your channel either. And it's really difficult to pick up the ideas from there and have a one place where you are putting that. So I think is to understand that, okay, this is kind of making the life easier inside a chat. For example, the one of the examples I use is that, okay, replace the chat ping pong you have with the loop component. You have everything there, and then you can copy paste it. The lifespan shouldn't be too long, because as mentioned, if people is leaving the organization, it's going to be kind of somebody has to make sure that, okay, those loop components also are copied, which ones are important and which ones aren't. So in the long term, the lifespan of this ideation planning part shouldn't be that long. So it shouldn't be kind of a final document, at least not at this point. When to use, I already mentioned planning, brainstorming, agenda, for example, taking notes, thinking about the next actions, who's doing, kind of a lightweight ideation process. People have been using it for daily stand-ups, or as I call them, daily loop-ups. So instead of having a meeting asking what's everyone doing. And that's a really good hybrid work scenario as well, because not everyone might be doing at the same time, but everyone can see what's status of everyone when they start updating. And if somebody's missing the status, they all see, okay, that one is missing. So it can be a loop component instead of a meeting. And it will enable that asynchronous and synchronous work, because you can see those changes instantly. They are synced, but you don't have to work on them at the same time. And so you can have different time zones, and you have all that information eventually there. And my preferred example is that using them instead of chatting or emails to capture the essential part. And everyone can edit that, because we know we can't edit somebody. Somebody's just making a kind of, hey, here's the agenda plan, and dropping that to the chat. So you have a kind of nicely formatted list of things. Okay, but I need to edit that one part there. Hey, that's an ideal place for a loop component instead. Just use that in there, and then when it's done, it can be copied to the somewhere that's really relevant. So you have to think about the lifespan part and sales buffering and so on. And of course, there are You can't use this with externals at the moment, but and task management is not ideal. It's kind of a lightweight way. Okay, this is what we are planning. This is what somebody should be doing. This is too much to be kind of making a plan or something else there. But instead, hey, we just use this and keep on updating this. It is very ad hoc, very free form teamwork style way. And talking about external sharing, I don't know if you noticed, but I tried the whiteboard today and the external sharing in Teams meeting is there. So we could have a whiteboard here now and we could work on that. And when the loop components get there, it's going to be much more interesting. I'm going to be heading towards the end. What's coming next? Of course, these other applications like coming to Teams meeting agendas, Outlooks, OneNotes, Whiteboards, Office apps is coming, and integrating these other business systems like Dynamics 365 SAP, having them surface inside the chat or in the email as a loop component. And in a few 6 weeks, 7 weeks, we can start getting information how we can build our own loop components. There, the Microsoft Loop application should be coming. The context IQ is going to be really helpful for us surfacing those components without having to look for them and getting the right link, but instead we could just add mention different components. And I really love the topic of metaverse because it's going to be interactive there and putting the loop components inside the immersive meetings. That's going to be awesome. So I really took my time. I see that I used the hour. I was worried I wouldn't, but of course I always like to talk. So hopefully you have now understanding what the loop components are, how you can use them, what are things that are good to know, and what's going to be the next. So you know what the loop components are and how to use them inside Teams. I hope that's really clear for you. Or if it's not, hey, drop me some questions. And we are also seeing what's going to happen at Build. Hopefully some great stuff. Thank you, everyone. I made it in the hour. If you want to see me talking next, it's going to be the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. I will be talking more about metaverse and future work there. And Microsoft Build is happening. And of course, I'll be at the Scottish Summit. I hope you enjoyed this and feel free to drop me any questions if the facilitators or organizers allow that at this time. And thank you for all the applauses.
Thank you so much. Fantastic, Vesku. Woo. With Richard Brynteson talking about shared channels. Take it away, Richard. I'm excited.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you are excited to learn about shared channels a little bit. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to raise your hand, interrupt me. I do coach speech and debate, so I could talk straight without taking a breath for a full hour. So please make sure to ask questions, and I'm guessing you're going to have one or two as we go along the way. So we're going to talk about shared channels, what they are. Just so you know, I'm based here in Minneapolis. I've been doing UC stuff since all the way back in OCS 2007. And you can find me online, theargylemvp.com, on Twitter. And I am the organizer for the Teams Skype for Business. For those who are still using Skype for Business users group, we meet every other month. So if you want more information about that, please feel free to reach out and shout. And I'll make this PowerPoint available online, and I'm sure Michelle can get it out or post it somewhere as well. Everyone can have this deck. It's nothing special inside of here. So we're gonna cover a lot of stuff. We're gonna talk about what are shared channels. We're gonna do a demonstration of shared channels. We're gonna understand the admin tools and compliance that goes around shared channels. We're gonna talk about how to set up public preview if you didn't have that, show you where the documentation are, and then take any questions. So a lot of content in an hour, so let's rock and roll. So Microsoft announced a little over a year ago this idea of Teams Connect, and it's a marketing term that includes two different things. It includes shared chats, which has been available for federation purposes for 9, 10, 12 months, however long. And the second piece is shared channels. So when you hear the term Teams Connect, it's really talking about both of these items at the same time. So sometimes it gets kind of confusing. I will refer to it as shared channels all the time, just also because Teams Connect is confusing in my head. So the idea behind Teams Connect and shared channels is we want to be able to chat, we want to be able to call, we want to be able to meet, we want to be able to share files, and we want to collaborate on applications with any user inside and outside of our organization with the least amount of friction that we can do. So that's the end goal for it. And I think when you see the demo of shared channels and we talk about it, you'll see that they've done a pretty good job of explaining that. So just a timeline so you have an idea. Back March 2021, they announced on Tech Community the initial announcements of Team Connect at Ignite last year. They showed a pretty good preview of what was coming. And as Michelle mentioned earlier, the public preview for shared channels starts today, actually. It rolled out last week. It should be available in every single tenant that's public, so not GCC, not education, right? Sorry for those folks. That'll come later, but your standard corporate, that shared channel public preview is today. The goal is summer of 2022 to have general availability. That is when they would also then make it available to both GCC and education. That's what was the last statement on that. So they're trying to hit that deadline for that group as well. So that's exciting. So what is a shared channel? So let's talk real quick. There are two types of channels today. There is the standard channel that inherits the membership of your entire team. So I've got the marketing team. It's got 5 members. That's an Office 365 group that's backed under the hood, and everyone is sharing that standard channel. All right. The private channel rolled out last year, which was an idea of creating a subset of a team. So I've got my marketing team. I've got 5 people in it, and I want to share a channel with only like 2 of those 5 people. The limitation with private channel was they had to be a member of the team itself, which kind of reduced the usefulness of it because now the individuals both saw the private channel they were invited to, but also the general channel and all the other standard channels as well. So it created this idea where I wanted to share something privately, but I couldn't like be super granular about it. So Microsoft then came up with the idea of a shared channel. And the idea behind the shared channel is a few things. First, we want to make sure that there's no tenant switching. I don't want to have to drop down and switch somewhere else. That's friction. The second goal is we want to avoid oversharing, right? That idea of the public channel, I don't want to have to, share an entire team just to be able to share a single channel. That seems to be a little silly. We want to decrease the team proliferation. We want to, manage our members really easy, and we want to scale, right? So these are all kind of the big goals of shared channels. So when we talk about shared channels, people mentally think that we're only talking about external users, and that is not the case. And I want to make that really clear to everyone. Shared channels has an incredible value both inside and outside the organization. So when I share with people, I've got my channel. I'm not limited to just sharing from Contoso to Fabricam. I could share from inside a channel inside my organization to maybe the CEO or the CIO or maybe some other individuals and not have to share the entire team. And that's the concept we're trying to gain here is both that internal, external. So obviously I can go external, I can share with different groups and all that kind of fun stuff. And I can also not only share with individual people, but I can share with an entire team externally and internally as well. So we'll show you what that kind of looks like because it's kind of an interesting use case. So let's create a shared channel. I do have backup videos just in case any of this goes completely terrible, but I have faith that it will not. So I'm in my Teams client here. I want to create a new channel inside of testing and validation. So when I come down and I choose add a channel, I get the normal screen, and here I'm now going to have my third option. So I've got standard, private, and shared. The first thing you'll note is when you share a channel via shared channels, it's going to ask you, who do you want to share this with? Do you want to share it with everyone in the team itself? So if I back up for half a second and I look at my managed team, I know I've got these 5 members already in the testing and validation team, but maybe I don't want to share it with all those 5 people. So I'm going to create a shared one. I'm going to call it Project XYZ. I'm going to uncheck this box and I'm going to click create. Oh, I already created that one. That's right. We'll call it ABCD. Now I'll hit create. All right, so it's going to create the channel. And then it's going to ask, do I want to share this channel with anyone externally? So I'm going to hit skip for now, just because I want to show you what the UI looks like. So the first thing you'll notice is when I create my shared channel, you'll notice that I get a new icon here to the side, and that designates that this is a shared channel. Above it, you can see a private channel. So I created one just so you can kind of see the differences between the two. And if I decided to manage this channel, right, you'll notice a few things. First, I have my own team membership here inside of the channel. So kind of like a private channel, I have that membership role, and I do have roles here where I can be an owner and a member as well. We'll talk about who can and can't have that role. The invite piece I'm going to come back to, but settings is another important thing because the shared channel has its own set of settings. And oftentimes this is where people ask, well, what about like, you know, our inheritance of, you know, compliance policies and tags and all that kind of fun stuff. Whatever is at the team level, when you create your shared channel, it will make a copy and inherit all of those items for you at the shared channel. So if you've created all the tags and compliance rules and everything else, you'll automatically get those stuffed in there. So you have them sitting there for you. So what I want to do is I want to share this channel. So I'm going to take this screen, I'm going to pop it over here, and boy, I got too many windows open now. Let's see if, oh, that wasn't the right one. See, that's the problem with Windows. There we go. Hey, all right. I failed my Windows 11 test here. Okay, here we go. So I've got a user here, so I'm going to share this channel, right? So when I come to share, when I hit the 3 dots here to Project ABCD, you'll notice that I have some options to share the channel. I can share it with people, I can share it with a team, or I can share it with a team that I own. And we'll look through each one of these. So I'm going to go ahead and say with people, and then I'm going to type in the name of the person I want to share this with. So I created a domain earlier, and you'll see that this happens to be an external user. It tells me it's external. So when I click on the button, I hit share. It's going to think for a second, and then I hit close. And over here, you'll notice immediately I got that pop up here that now I have access to the Project ABCD group. I will tell you right now, there's a bug inside of the public preview already. You're not supposed to be able to see general, and yet it pops up every once in a while. So look at that, we're 5 seconds into public preview and we're already getting bugs. So at this point in time, I have my project. I could start a new conversation. And this person over here is going to see it. We can reply to the conversation. And what's happening now is I've shared this individual channel outside of my organization. And from an end user perspective, I did not have to switch tenants. I did not have to change my context. Everything remained directly inside of Microsoft Teams. And I kind of hit the panacea of sharing information. As I mentioned, you can share this beyond just individuals though. So I'm going to hit share with team. And what I can do now is I can invite a team owner to this channel. And what's going to happen is that team owner then can choose then to share a team back to this one channel. So I'm going to type this name of the same person I did before. And I'm going to hit this, and it's going to say an invite was sent. And Joel, no, they can't see any contents of general. I'll click on it again. You'll see it kind of like crashes the window right now. So I sent a notification, all right? And I got a pop-up here. So if I go to the activity, you'll notice that I got this new invite. So this is completely new concept to Teams. So my user now in this external tenant has received an invitation to share Project ABCD with that person, with the organization, all right? And you'll notice it has 14 days, otherwise it expires. It tells you who the organization is that's sending it. So in this case, I've cutely named my Office 365 tenant Office, not very helpful, but that's what it's named. So when I click accept, what it's going to do is it's going to show me all of the teams that I own. So in this case, I own sales management, I own the project widget, and I own this default one. So if I click sales management and hit done, what I am telling back to this tenant is, right, the invite came from tenant A to tenant B. Tenant B is saying, I would like to share Project ABCD with everyone in the sales management team. So it's team to team sharing at this point in time. So if I come back to my managed channel, and you'll remember I have those sent invites, I mentioned that before. The invite is sitting here, and hopefully you can do it. Hit refresh. Normally you get a notification that it was accepted. Still says it's validating though. Da, 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 demo gods. Don't strike today. All right, well, this is why I have a video of this, just on the off chance this went south. Hold on. If you have a question, this is a good time to ask it too.
Yeah, there's one here that says, forgive me if we've discussed it already, but is this a feature that has to be turned on? And is there some way to limit who a user can share with, especially for external sharing?
Yeah, there's a ton of admin controls, Kevin, and we're going to get in depth on that because as you can imagine, this has some pretty large ramifications to your organization. We'll see if that ever decides to finish. All right, just finding my video here real quick. All right, here we go. Oops. Sorry about that. All right, so let me show this to you. I'll show it slideshow form, and then hopefully it comes back to us with it. So I chose share channel with a team, okay? And then I entered, in this case, we typed Kiko, who's external, and we sent the invite. Kiko then received that invite, just like you saw that it worked for me, yay, that demo worked that far. Then in this case, Kiko, right, picks the team they want to share with. And then what happens is it comes back to the original person, Daniela, to then approve this piece. So it's a two-way process. First, I need to share it with the external party in tenant B. Tenant B gets the request, chooses the team they'd like to share with, comes back to tenant A, and then the team owner who initially started that request is going to get an approval. So they can't just like secretly throw people into a shared channel on the fly. You have to both send the request and then approve the request. So it's quite a complicated process. Not a complicated, but it's a back and forth that you have to be aware of that has to happen.
Rich, what happens if somebody adds members to that team?
So the great thing is it's automatic membership at that point in time, because okay. I've not done a share with an individual. I shared with a team. So in this case, right, I shared it with sales marketing. So if I add anyone to sales marketing, right, they're going to automatically have access then to Project ABCD.
Okay.
Which is
yeah, because
really cool.
In your PowerPoint demo, right, it was like 14 users, but maybe in 2 months or something, it's like now it's 20 users.
Correct. Yep. And the reason I was hoping it would actually finish, what's cool is because of how I shared this with sales marketing, from a UI perspective, we're going to actually see this project ABCD show up right underneath sales marketing as a team. So it's going to look like it's a channel as a member of the sales management team, even though it's external, which is pretty cool. All right. Does the original invite have to approve any new members? Nope. So once you've assigned it to a team externally, that external party can add whomever they want into that team at that point in time, and they gain access to that shared channel. So if you're going to do sharing with team, obviously you want to, have a pretty good understanding and relationship with that far side. All right. Can you share a channel with an internal team? Absolutely. And that's the beauty of this, right? So when I do this share a channel, so if I come back here and I say share channel with a team, it doesn't have to be an external person. I could send this to anyone as long as they are a team owner, and then they can select any team that they're an owner of and accept it on behalf of. So that's the interesting part. So as an end user, I think that'll be the one tricky part, is how do I know who is the owner of that other team, so I know who to share with, because it has to be shared with a team owner in this case. So that piece will be interesting. The other piece you'll notice in the UI is when I pick share channel, I can also do with a team you own. So I can short circuit the process. If I'm a team owner of a bunch of different channels, I can just click on that and it's just going to show me all the ones that I already am an owner of. I can select it and do that sharing process. So I don't have to do back and forth because I'm already a team owner in that case. Are there other questions about this ownership sharing aspect? It's a little weird, I get it, but I think it's pretty cool. Does the access login show up for both sides? Wondering about resolving potential. Yeah, so from an audit perspective, so let's talk about what's happening under the hood a little bit and how this actually works. So when I share my channel, right, so I went from tenant A to tenant B, and I said I'm going to do this shared channel. We've set up beforehand this concept of B2B direct connect, and we'll talk about how to federate your organization. So unlike federation, which you can you can basically just turn it on and federate with anyone from an IM perspective, you have to explicitly set up from an administrative level to say tenant A is going to communicate with tenant B, and tenant B has to do that same configuration in reverse. So, and by default, all of that is disabled. But when I do set up that shared channel or that B2B direct connect between the two, what's happening under the hood is this user here in tenant B, the reason they don't have to switch, from the drop-down box to switch tenants is because I am simultaneously now logged into both my tenant and also tenant A in this case under the hood, right? So in the old days, right, if you think about guest access, if I invited a guest to a channel inside of my Azure AD, right, I had a laundry list of users that were marked as guest, right? So, and it was creating a physical object inside of my Azure Active Directory to keep track of that guest account. In this case, there is no user object created in my Azure AD because I've set up that B2B direct connect relationship between the two. So from an administrative perspective, it thinks that other user is simply almost as if it's a user of my tenant, right? It doesn't have access to anything, right? It only has access to the information inside that shared channel. But that means things like if I've got an MFA policy, I've got compliance policies, all those things, then they're going to exist between the two. Is there reporting for the admin to be able to track shares and permissions? There is some, and we'll talk about who can and can't see shared channels in a second, so I'll come back to that one. Mike, yes, the domain has to be trusted, and we'll actually show you what that looks like. Can you share an existing channel? In other words, can you share a channel? It wasn't, no, nope. So you can't convert. So Sean's question is, can I convert a channel basically from standard to shared or private to shared or something? Nope. You have to create it as a shared channel, right? And that's just how it works. And it's no different than a private channel. You can't like convert a private channel into a shared channel. Hit refresh here one more time just to see if my pending invite worked. If not, I guess I get to fill out a bug for Microsoft. Oh, there it is. Yay. All right. So now I finally got my pending request. It took a little bit. Maybe everyone's using the public preview right now. So again, remember, I shared it off to tenant B. Tenant B selected the sales manager group. I'm going to hit approve. I hit the approve button, and magically within a few seconds, I should see the team show up, and there it goes. It shows up right underneath sales management. And so from a UI perspective, this is amazing, right? I am now communicating with an external party. It looks like it's just natively inside of the shared channel. There is zero context switching at this point in time because now I'm inside of sales management. So hopefully you can start to see some of the absolute power and benefits that come out of this idea of kind of having these shared channels. And remember, although I'm doing this externally, you can absolutely do it internally as well. So, all right. So let's jump back here real quick. So we talked about this, right? Shared channels. You can share with an individual, both internal, external. You can share with another team, both internal, external, and you can share with your own team. So it does set up for some really interesting scenarios of trying to keep track of who you're sharing content with. And this kind of goes back to Jake's question, you know, what can I see from an admin report, right? So I have a general channel here. Lucy and Andy are the owners. Betty is a member. I created a private channel, right, which is a subset of team members. So I just put Lucy and Betty in it. And then Lucy, who's an owner, created this shared channel. And then Lucy shared it with Carla, shared it with Team Z at Northwinds, shared it with Team B, which Lucy owns. So at the end of the day, through those 3 acts, I've now shared this, right, with 7, 8, different people. So it's fairly interesting to see how fast this can kind of spread out. And as mentioned before, right, if I add a member to Team B, since I'm the owner, or whoever the owner is of Team Z at Northwinds adds users, they're going to automatically be added to this. What I won't be able to see is I won't get a list of who those users are external to my organization. I'm not going to know who in Team Z, right, beyond who the owner was, all the individual users that are in Team Z today. So from an administrative standpoint, right, you've got to know who that team owner is and who you're sharing it with from that perspective. Yes, Eileen, there's definitely an icon, right? So when I come back to my team here, make it big again, right? I can see this cute little icon. I don't know what that's supposed to be. I guess that's now the universal icon for share. And then private is above. So you can definitely see the differences between the two. All right. All right. Yeah, admin's got total control over everything. So let's talk about that, because I think that's where the more interesting stuff is in the grand scheme of things. All right, so who are shared channels for? I think it's for all organizations. When everyone asked for sharing, right, and we got guest access to teams, I don't think that's what anyone actually wanted, to be dead honest. Because that whole tenant switching, I have to switch tenants, I don't get notified anymore, so I lose my presence, I lose my phone calls, right? Like what people really wanted to do is they wanted to be able to share across organizations in a more seamless manner. The second reason why I think shared channels are really important is for team sprawl. Think about the number of times people have created a channel of a subset of users because they wanted to be able to share something with someone else, and they didn't want to bring them into the team as a whole. So that kind of, reduces that. And if you just start thinking about, like specific use cases, right? Management groups, internal, external product groups, right? Being able to share with people, I think it's a really big deal. So you'll see that as pretty helpful. So I mentioned this before, and we're gonna go through this config in a second, but all of this is built on top of this concept of B2B Direct Connect. So in Azure, back in February, they introduced this idea of B2B Collab, right? And that was a way to share information between organizations in a guest fashion. Now with B2B Direct Connect, what we're doing is we're setting up a mutual trust between two different organizations so that when I'm in tenant B, I can seamlessly log into tenant A and gain access to the items that I need to be able to have on that side. So things to know, right? It powers the collaboration of the shared channel. This is how we're going to collab in the future. And if you think about sharing, right, B2B Direct Connect and shared channels as a starting point, there are all sorts of places across the Microsoft ecosystem where you could potentially take advantage of this, right? It allows you to be able to search for people via email address. So then I can be able to search across that tenant. So once I've set up that mutual trust, I can search for users so I can invite the right people. I can share apps and other resources. And this is important. So when I'm sharing, like I have a SharePoint file that's inside, or I've uploaded a file into Teams that's backed by SharePoint, that external user on the far side doesn't have to have like some sort of explicit share permissions like granted to them in addition, because they're a member of that channel. And because they're a member of that channel, they're automatically going to be able to gain the access of all the resources inside of the channel. So from a sharing perspective and a friction perspective, it greatly reduces it. And then we have all this other fun stuff. So let's do this. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to go to Azure. And I'm going to go to Azure Active Directory because I want to show you what this looks like in terms of setting up a tenant for B2B Direct Connect. So when you go into Azure AD, you have external identities on the left-hand side. When I see that, I'm going to see a new option called Cross-Tenant Access Settings. I don't know why it's named that, but that's what it is. This is rolled out to all tenants. Someone's going to probably ask, what about GCC? I don't know if this is rolled out to GCC. Someone will probably have to check on that for me. And what I'm going to see is I'm going to see the organizations that I'm already configured with. So if I wanted to add a new one, I could simply hit add organization. I could type in the domain of that organization, and it's going to just search up automatically what is the name and pull back the tenant ID. And then I can click the add button, and they're going to get added to my list. So here, right, we've now seen that I've got that office one, but I've just added T2M Works. And by default, it's always going to do inherit by default. If I go to the default settings and I look at B2B Direct Connect, both inbound and outbound, because remember, it's a mutual trust. So I have to set up both an inbound rule and an outbound rule. They are blocked by default. Although I could change the defaults to say allow content from everyone, I am telling you, you should not ever do that. That is a terrible idea and will probably break every single compliance thing you could imagine in your organization. So don't do it, right? Pretend it doesn't even exist. What you really need to do then is come here, and then for inbound access, I can specify and say allow, hold on, discard. Got to go to B2B Direct Connect. That's important, right? Go to the right tab. I'm going to hit customize, and I'm going to say allow access. And then it's going to ask me for the application support. Do I want to allow access for that? I have to say yes. If I try to have them mismatch, it's actually going to tell me you can't do that. So I'm going to say allow for both external users and groups and applications. I'm going to hit save. And then when I come back, it's now going to say it's configured. And that was inbound access from T2M Works. Now I want outbound access, right? I've got to do the other half of it. So I come here and I do the same thing and I say allow, allow. And when I hit save this time on the external one, they're like, hey, just so you know, you're going to allow any user from your organization to externally communicate, right, to this, then you can go ahead and say yes to that. Now, you will notice that down here at the bottom, there is an applies to. So both at the user level and at the app level, and by default, it's all users, okay? And mine is grayed out. At the top, it tells you, hey, if you have an Azure AD Premium account or license, congratulations. You can have this magic button down here that allows you to be more granular. So you could say, I only want to allow external communication to only these users on the far side. I'm not 100% sure if I'd actually want to try to manage that as an administrator, but you do have that option if you have a premium license. Now remember, I set this up from my tenant, right? In this case, this is my GCM tenant to T2M Works. I would have to communicate with the Azure AD admin on the T2M Works side and say, hey, fantastic admin, I need you to set up this B2B Direct Connect in the other direction back to me so that shared channels works. Both organizations have to consent and both organizations need to set it up. That's the only way this will work. And by default, it's turned off. Questions while I drink water? I'm just going to delete that because I don't want it there. All right, cool, no questions. Either I did a great job of explaining it or you all fell asleep.
I think they're all stunned.
Stunned in shock. All right, so this is kind of the recap of what I just said a moment ago, right? Of course, Jake's sleeping. B2B Direct Connect is off by default, all right? Inbound and outbound access needs to be set up. You saw the granular controls, right? And how everything is controlled, all right? Or clicking around the admin page. I've got a task at the end to add them, just in case for that. All right, so from a Teams perspective, all right, so not only is there an administrative, right, level at the Azure standpoint, we also have control inside of Teams itself. All right, so let's go take a look at that real quick. So if I go to the Teams dashboard and I go to Teams policies, you'll notice in my global policy now, let me make this a little bigger for you. You will see that I now have the option to create private channels, create shared channels, invite external users to shared channels, and join external shared channels. This is a great mashup of options from an administrative standpoint. So by default, these are on by default in global. That was a lot of defaults there. So if you were to run to your Teams admin portal today, this should be sitting there already for you. And if not, we'll talk about how to get into public preview so you can see this stuff. Maybe you just want to turn it off, right? I could say, you know what? I don't want everyone in my organization to be able to do this right away. I want to be able to roll it out in some sort of controlled fashion. So I'm going to flip it off for everyone like that. And instead, I'm going to add a new policy called shared channels. And maybe I just want to create shared channels and that's it, right? I'm going to let people share and invite other internal people only, but no one external, right? Because again, shared channels is super powerful and I can do it both internal and external. So I've got that option. If you wanted to, right, you could then decide, you know, if I want to give those extra pieces. So again, right, you could even go so far as to say, hey, you know, my organization is kind of a one-way street. We're the most important person in the world. So we're going to let you invite other people in, but you can't accept their invite instead. We're the owner of everything. Okay, so you can kind of play with these policies and kind of have some fun in terms of how these are set up. So once the policy is created, let me just create it actually. Right, they can create a shared channel, I hit apply. I could then, just like I do today, right, I could go to a user, I could find Alice, and I could then come down to my Teams policies, let it load for a second. Oops, meant policies, click in the right spot. And I could hit the edit button and I could find my Teams policies and I could change it, right? So I could assign these shared channels directly to this one individual, all right? If business classes, they don't even see it. So if you haven't set up, so actually, let me take that back. They will see it. So the question is, what happens to an end user if I try to share it with someone I haven't, you know, don't have permissions to? So let me come back to this user because that's a really good question, right? That's actually something I hope they change. So I'm going to say I want to share this with an external person, and I'm going to share it with Kurt. I don't even remember if this is his actual email. I don't think it is, but it won't work anyways. So what's going to happen is I'm going to type in an email address and it's going to say, I didn't find any matches. So from an end user perspective, it just looks like they don't have any idea who that person is until I put in that specific connection between the two, right? And then once it starts doing this search, should put a vanity domain on here, then it'll start seeing it. So end user, it's just nothing. My hope is, and we talked to the product team about this, is that maybe it'd be really cool if I could like customize that message. All right. So, all right. What is file? It looks exactly the same. So, and that's the key element here, right? Whatever is happening in the channel from a file perspective is exactly the same, right? So if I came over here, right, this is tenant A on the left. I'm going to create a new Word document. I hit create, right? It's going to create that document for me. Over here, I have to hit refresh because there's no actual refresh button. There's my Word document, right? And this becomes the power of it, right? So now on the left and the right, same document. Maybe. Having two windows side by side is confusing. There we go. Oh, stop it. There we go.
I think you're supposed to take one deep breath in between.
I know it's like Teams has wrapped the window. Look at it. It's just very confused by the UI because I have them side by side. But there we go, right? So the idea, Eileen, right, is from a file perspective, you know, we're collabing on both of these side by side at the same time. I didn't switch tenants. I didn't have to ask for a special password, right? At the end, the tenant A didn't have to do anything special with it, right? I just have access to it. Can I open, you know, via SharePoint? I've got all the same options here, right? Open the app, do all that kind of fun stuff. I can click open in SharePoint. It's going to pop open. It's going to give me this site, right? So this is my tenant B again, right? So I see what's there. I can upload files. I can do all sorts of fun things. Okay. So, and I can even see that it's external, right? It's telling me it's external. It's telling me it's a shared channel right here. All right. So, I mean, the intent here is at the end of the day, right? Get over here. I want these two things to be exactly the same from an end user experience standpoint. I don't want them to realize that there's anything different between the two channels, right? Other than I can see that it's external. No friction. That's the end goal here. All right. All right, so other things. So team owners, what are their roles? How does it work? All that kind of fun stuff. All right, this is important. First thing, only team owners can create a shared channel. No one else in the team can. So that's item number one, right? Team owners can see all shared channels. Even if they're not a member of it, they can see the shared channel. They can't see the content. They can't see anything inside of it, but they can see that the shared channel exists. All right. So from an administrative perspective, that means, you know, that if I run, you know, Graph API calls or PowerShell, I can get information there on the back end. Right. Team owners can delete a shared channel without being a member. So team owners have a lot of control here. Right. So hopefully, you know, there's no rogue team owners out doing shared channels. And the next one comes across the top and deletes it on you on the fly. That would be super inconvenient. Only the team owners can accept an invite, right? So remember when I did that share aspect from channel or from team to team, there was that invite process back and forth. Only the team owner can accept it. The team owner and any team owner can terminate the sharing relationship. And then, as I mentioned before, the shared channel inherits all the labels from the team on creation. So if I were to take a step back and I came back here to this, I'm the team owner here, right? So if I manage the channel, I can see the teams and the members I've shared this with. So if I wanted to just remove access, right, any team owner would be able to see this. I could just come in here and basically remove individuals from here. Okay. What's important to realize then is that not only is there an owner of the team, but now there's an owner of the channel as well. Okay, because someone's got to manage the channel because they're who can share it. So only an in-tenant member can be a channel owner. So I'm in tenant A, I've shared this with tenant B. The only people who can manage it are tenant A individuals, right? That means the channel owner manages the entire life cycle of the channel. It's like almost like they're a pseudo team's owner, okay? So if you remove a member from a team, right, it's not going to remove it from a shared channel if they are shared directly, right? So you remember we had that idea of management between two teams. If I were to, share team to team, the management is going to sync, or the users are going to sync between it because I shared it at a team level. But if I share it, individually on the other side, just because they were a member of that team and I remove the team from access potentially, but I also share it at the individual level, the individual will still stay there, right? So they're two different sharing mechanisms, individually and team, and you manage them separately. The last owner can't be removed from a shared channel, all right? And you can override any of the default channel settings. So from a team owner or from a channel owner perspective, right? So when I click on manage channel, I have these settings we looked at before, right? So different from the team owner, right? Who sent the invite, what kind of settings are in here. So I could change these and make them different based at the channel level versus the holistic team level. All right. We talked about this before. You can share and co-author files across the list, okay? There's a custom template under the hood called Team Channel Number 1. So you can query that for all the SharePoint experts in the room. I'm not that person, but if you know how to look up templates names, you can look up that. That way you can see who's there. The admin experience on the SharePoint Online side is improved. There's no default channel, and the reason we're talking about this is this top list here. Every single shared channel has its own dedicated SharePoint collection or site. Just like a private channel created its own SharePoint site, shared channels are going to do exactly the same thing. All right. So from an administrative standpoint, it's not an Office 365 group that's anchoring this experience. It's the SharePoint site that's the anchor in this case. All right. So Ryan, I'm going to come back to your question because I don't want to end on a downbeat. If a team is archived, what happens? It's archived, just like the channel will be archived as part of it is the normal process. What if the last owner has left the organization? So just like a private channel today, if the owner of a private channel leaves the organization and gets deleted, what Teams does is just picks a random user in the chat or in the team and makes them the owner of the private channel. The same thing happens with shared channels. So if all the team owners or all the channel owners leave, then a random team owner is going to be thrown in there and suddenly take control of it. So it's one of those things we talk all the time about adoption. You want to always make sure that your teams have more than one owner. You want to make sure that all of your channels are going to have more than one owner as well. Otherwise, you can run into these kind of weird experiences. Chris, no, the external users will absolutely not show up in Azure AD as a guest account. And that's kind of the beauty of this, right? I don't have to manage these guest accounts. They don't clutter my Azure AD environment. They are a normal user via this mutual trust between the two. Yes, thank you, Michelle. Shared channels, SharePoint permissions models, all that kind of fun stuff. Okay. So co-authoring, all that kind of fun stuff under the hood. Meetings, we support meetings in the shared channel experience as well, because it is just a channel that is shared. It's, again, zero friction between the two. So that meet now and scheduled meetings at the channel level, an external participant can join that shared channel meeting. So if I have meetings created inside of the channel itself, they can see them, they can join them. Channel members are not by default added as a meeting participant like you do in a standard channel. So if you ever create a meeting inside of a standard channel, it invites everyone automagically to that meeting. That's not the case here. You have to actually specify who's coming in there. And the one oddity is that only members of the host tenant can start the meeting or schedule a meeting inside the channel. So this is one area where that external user, even though they're kind of like a normal user, because that mutual trust relationship, they don't actually have some powers. And this is one of those instances where they have. No, they cannot have a shared channel calendar. And we'll talk about that right now. So the other great thing here is that I can use my apps in real time between the two. So if I've got a tab app that I've added to my channel, right? So if I come back here and I click on this and I say, I want to add a new app, like lists, for example, right? The far side is also going to see this list app appear inside of their app, right? So here, now I've got one more, there's lists. So again, now these apps from an end user perspective, right? I've shared my app between the two and it's the same exact experience. What's great is the shared channel is going to support tabs and connectors, bots, message extensions, your line of business applications. There's an SDK support all around this as well. Here's the biggie. I mentioned it before. The channel is not built on top of an Office 365 group. It's built on top of those SharePoint permissions. If you are someone who loves Planner and use Planner every day, what is Planner built on top of? It's built on top of Microsoft 365 groups, which means when this rolls out in GA, there will not be Planner support at a shared channel level because the underlying goop that controls Planner isn't the same from a membership standpoint. So there's no way to deal with membership today. The Planner team is well aware they're working on a plan, right? But it's not going to, whatever they're going to do to support this shared channel architecture is not going to be ready when this goes to GA in this summer. So expect to hear announcements about Planner and any other app that is dependent on an Office 365 group as its backing under the hood. None of those apps will work. So I know Planner is one. I remember hearing a couple of others, but I didn't use the other ones ever. So it like slipped in and out of my mind immediately because Planner is the one I use all the time. All right. Okay. All right. So if you want, because I know people love to test things out, if you want to try shared channels and you're looking for an organization to test this against, I have my shared channel that we use for Office or for the Minnesota Teams Skype users group, and I am willing to set up any type of external back and forth connection between the two. So you would have to set it up on your side, need to set it up on my side, but then I would invite your account or whichever accounts you want me to into that shared channel so you could see what the shared channel experience looks like to an external user, right? So if that's something you want, I'm going to throw this into the chat and you can fill out this form. And after the meeting today, I will go ahead and go through my B2B Direct Connect and I will invite people or set all that kind of fun stuff up. And that way you can kind of see it live from your perspective. You'll also suddenly have access to other people. You can chat, you can do whatever. We can send silly gifts to each other. I don't care. Public preview, I mentioned this before. So public preview has started today for it. So you need to set up your organization and your clients into the public preview so they can gain access to this. There are two pieces to it. There's a back-end piece, which is available to everyone right now. You don't realize it, but the changes were pushed out there. But the second piece is from the end user perspective, that's done at the client level. So if I wanted to put my organization or a subset of users of my organization into public preview, what I do is from Teams Admin Center, I go into Teams update policies, and there is a setting here for, and it's got one whole setting here, show preview features. By default, yours is probably set to not enabled or to follow Office preview. If it's not enabled, it means no one has access to it. If it's set to follow Office preview, it means it would only be available to individuals who have the Office preview program installed on their computer. You may or may not know who those people are. I have no clue. So what you can do is you can set it to enabled, which gives that option to everyone, right? So if I do it at the global level, everyone has access to it. If I wanted to, right, I could say not enabled. I could again create a new policy called public preview. I can enable it. And then I could go assign this to individuals on a user by user basis. Yes, Joel, you're right. The only people, because again, what's happening under the hood is when you're doing a shared preview or public preview features, it's controlled at the end user perspective. So the element that's missing is they don't have the ability to create them. You mean you want me to make this thing available to everyone, Jake? I mean, that's funny. All right, I will, there we go. Sorry, Jake. I didn't actually test the link before I did it. I just did it. All right, tell me if that works, because I changed it so it says it works for anyone now. Get back to my chat here. Okay, cool. No, I have not played with anything with Defender for cloud apps. So I don't have any experience on that one. I haven't even gone down that road to this point, so I can't answer that question. And I don't know if anyone else does. All right, so that's the public preview. That's the first thing you need to do. All right, so a couple of security elements in here, right? Host compliance policies are what are in effect when a channel is shared with other tenants. So whatever I've set at the host level, right? If I go and I share it with tenant B, it doesn't matter what tenant B has set up. They are going to inherit the policies that were set in tenant A. If tenant B has the flip side, if tenant B is more secure and tenant A is less secure, doesn't matter. We're still going to use tenant A's security policies. All right. I mentioned it already, right, that the channel inherits team sensitivity labels. It also inherits any geo settings at the team level, right? E-discovery, channel messages, right? All this stuff is going to work just like you would expect e-discovery to work. Legal hold does have kind of a nuance. Only the host tenant members can be put in legal hold. I can't like magically make tenant B users suddenly in legal hold. That would be wild and inappropriate. Information barriers only work at the host level because you can't set up information barriers with an external participant today. The retention and DLP policies, again, everything's at tenant A. Whoever shared it, whoever owns it, right? That's whose policies in terms of retention and DLP are going to be applied. And the important thing to remember then is that wherever you create this shared channel, that's where the data is going to reside. It's going to reside in tenant A's SharePoint environment. So there's not going to be like a copy floating out on tenant B somewhere, right? That doesn't exist. So there's only one copy. It only exists in tenant A, and all the security policies around it exist there. Any type of Azure AD logs, monitoring, auditing, all that stuff, you can find all of it in Azure AD logs, including who accessed what, right? Even for the external people, they will show up in your log files, so you'll see who externally is accessing your stuff. And if you use access reviews inside of Azure AD, this does include all of your B2B Connect users, so you'll be able to see that kind of information at the access level perspective as well, right? There are some limits to be aware of. There's a limit of how many people can be in a team. It's 25,000. The number of shared channels per team is 200. That includes your deleted. And the number of teams a channel can be shared with is 50. So we talked about, again, that whole idea of how I'm sharing. I can share it both at an individual, a team externally, a team internally, a team I own. I can only pick 50 of those teams, be it internal or external, does not matter. And then the last one is from a direct member perspective, there can only be 5,000 direct members shared with. So you can get pretty crazy here, obviously, just by looking at these numbers. And at the most, you'll only see 25,000 people in your shared channel in the distinct users list. So share away, I guess. Microsoft has provided, and I will get this presentation out to everyone. They have a ton of admin documentation that exists out there for shared channels, how B2B Direct Connect works, configuring it. They also have end user documentation at this point now as well, how to create shared channels, how to interact with them, guests, owners, roles, all that kind of fun stuff. Because it's public preview, they've published everything for us, so you can really get in there and kind of kick the tires and see what works and what doesn't work, and the other little nuances that come along the way. So that is everything I had for shared channels. I have no clue what the time is, so hopefully I got close. Any questions? I blew through some aspects kind of fast because I just want to make sure we got through the content because there's a ton there. But any other questions? Anyone excited? I'm excited. I do think this is going to fundamentally change how people share content and how they interact with other organizations, internal and external.
Yep, agreed. I think it's especially around switching tenants.
Yeah,
that's probably been the biggest complaint for the last year.
Yep, it's not a fun experience, right? That friction of going between them, losing notifications, all that other stuff. Yeah, I think this changes quite a bit. So, all right. Thank you, Michelle.
All right. Thank you so much, Richard. Great information. Yeah, and we'll make sure that we'll have